Good morning everyone, today we're going to be talking about chapter 5 of the story, so I will be covering some spoilers, so if you haven't completed chapter 5, maybe complete it first and then come back to this video, because it's really good. Chapter 5 is absolutely amazing and I don't want to spoil it for you guys, so please do yourselves a favor and complete the story first before watching this video so that you don't get spoiled. But before we jump into that, if you're new to the channel, I upload NGS content daily, so if you do play this game, I would really appreciate a subscribe as it really helps out the channel. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin the video. So the very first thing I want to announce is tomorrow's episode is going to be Arks Trash Evolution. For those who don't know, Arks Trash is my podcast which I put off for quite some time because I was just swamped with work and stress and stuff like that, and I just didn't have the energy nor the time to actually continue with the podcast series. However, now we finally have a little bit of time. I'm kind of driving myself to overworking a little bit, but I can make it happen. And so tomorrow is going to be the first episode of Arks Trash Evolution, which is season 2 of my podcast. Oh, that announcement out of the way, it is time to talk about chapter 5, or the conclusion of episode 1 in NGS. Again, I want to stress there will be spoilers, so if you don't want to be spoiled, maybe come back to this video after you completed the story. So the first thing I want to address is chapter 5 is absolutely amazing. It was so much better than all of the other chapters that we've had. So basically in the past 2 years of NGS, the story has been okay. You know, there are some hype moments. Oh, we get to fight all these special bosses. Oh, each town has their own little problem and stuff like that. And the story progressively has gotten a little bit better over time. However, chapter 5 was leaps and bounds better than all of the other chapters. It felt like we were finally coming back into PSO2. So one of the main selling points that really gravitated me towards the original base game was because the story was so outlandish and so crazy that the script writers were just like, oh yeah, anything goes. We're just gonna write the most bizarre thing ever and we're just gonna try to make it work. And that was one of the things that I really loved about the base game story. It was just like, yeah, you know, you get isekai, now there's dragon and orcs. It's just like totally out there. And then you get reversed isekai, and then you find out that the isekai wasn't real. And yeah, it's basically the entirety of the base game was just really wacky and really crazy, that it didn't follow the traditional MMO storytelling of like, you're the hero, you go defeat the great evil, blah blah blah. Like, they put a lot of twists and turns that most people wouldn't expect. So when NGS first came out and we had like Alio and then we had Retem, you know, it was just like, oh god, we're going back to like really basic, really fundamental type of MMO genre. You're the hero, you go save the day, and this is the big bad, you go beat them up. And then it just felt like they kept going on with this really mundane, boring storyline. So I was getting a little bit worried after we defeated Dark Falls. I was like, okay, are we finally gonna open the floodgates, and are we finally gonna go to space and just like open the world and actually go crazy? And chapter 5 delivered. When we went up to La Ciel and we finally met the big bad Zeveto, and then we had a boss fight against him and all of that stuff, that was so cool. Like, the build-up was amazing. Going through all of the different little biomes was such a throwback. It was so much nostalgia for me personally. I was just like, oh my gosh, this is base PSO2. Look at all these different tile sets. Look at all of these different biomes, all of these different enemies. There are some really cool enemies there. I really like that Matrix looking monster with a big ring on its back that kind of rotated. Like, that thing was super cool. And then of course the boss battle itself was really fun as well. For those who didn't notice, the last boss at Zeveto was actually like a combination of all the different bosses we fought with. So he had the Doldoris drill, he had the Daidal swords, he had the Kelkundo kick, he had all of these different moves combined together to make like the ultimate boss. So it's really cool how they built up to that. It's like, oh yeah, we fought all of these dolls together, and then now it finally pays off because you're fighting a final boss that has all of those skills, so it kind of trains your muscle memory, which is really cool. So what I'm excited for is, okay, where are we going next? Because now we've established that there is a big bad after Zeveto. Like, Zeveto is like, he pieced out, right? You had a build up, it's like, oh wow, okay, he's the big bad. You go to him and he just drops truth bombs on you. He's just like, I'm not the big bad. There's a guy that's even worse than me out there, and they're gonna come and kill us all. And it's just like, okay, who are these starless people? It's so cool that we finally find that there's something greater than us. And what was crazy in the story was when he was like, oh yeah, the Starless came and they just slaughtered 100 billion people. And you're just sitting there going like 100 billion people? How does that even happen? And not only that, you actually get a cutscene of seeing the Oracle fleet just get obliterated. And you're just sitting there going like, oh my God, what the hell is going on? And it is so cool. It is so cool. I'm just so excited to see that NGS is finally ramping things up. And what was really the nail in the coffin was actually at the end of chapter 5, they roll the credits. For those who don't know, who have never played the base game, they roll the credits after every single episode. So when you complete an episode, so episode 1, they'll roll the credits, episode 2, they'll roll the credits, so forth and so on, to let you know that, okay, this part of the story is concluded, we're moving on to bigger, better things. So I'm super excited to see where the next chapter is going to lead us. Are we actually going to go to space? And if we do go to space, how are we actually going to travel through space? We don't have a spaceship. We don't have the Oracle fleet anymore. So how on earth are we going to travel? Now, I was chatting with a couple people earlier in town, and they had a brilliant idea. Maybe Planet Alpha is actually our ship. For those who have watched Wandering Earth or Wandering Earth 2, like that, it just gives me that funny idea of, yeah, we're just going to add in jet boosters onto our planet, because we've seen the jet boosters in Retem in the desert area, like there's busted up rocket booster looking things. Maybe we're going to restore that and we're just going to boosh and just catapult Planet Alpha through space, and this is actually going to be our home hub instead of what we had in the base game where it was like an actual spaceship. Maybe the entire planet is going to be our quote-unquote spaceship, and we're going to travel to different universes in Planet Alpha. It's a crazy idea, but I think it might work. Now, if you guys think that's too outlandish, another theory is going to be, of course, the more safer bet, and that is we're simply just going to go into La Ciel, and that's this little spaceship itself, and you're just going to catapult yourself to another planet. And since La Ciel has the ability to create biomes, because it literally created this entire planet, so I don't see why La Ciel can't just go to another planet, plop there, instantly create all these different biomes again, and boom, we're in a new solar system. However, something else that I really want to talk about is we are created through the resurgent Arks. This is something that they stressed a lot. They said that we are the resurgent Arks, you know, Zevetta was the commander. So now we know we are only a small faction of the Arks group. So are we going to be introduced to different Arks factions as we need to band together to fight against these Starless? I think that is definitely a possibility. We're going to travel through space and we're going to meet all of these different factions, and each faction probably has their own ideal solution on how they're going to be defeating these Starless. So the conflict of ideals is going to be something super interesting to see, and I can't wait to actually meet all of the different factions of the Arks, because that could be the premise of episode 2 is, okay, we finally find out what the Starless is. Maybe in the very beginning of episode 2, we finally fight the Starless and then we just get totally annihilated. And so we're like, okay, we can't do this alone. We have to find the other Arks. We have to unite together. And once we're all united under the Arks banner, then we can go fight the big bad evil. And then, you know, obviously we need to fix up our weapons, upgrade our photons, photon sensitivity, all of that stuff. And then we go fight the Starless or the big bad. And maybe what we find out is, oh, the Starless are actually like Arks, but the corrupted or something along those lines. And it's, wow, the possibilities are endless for episode 2, and I can't wait to actually see that, and I can't wait to experience it. So I am very happy with how episode 5 concluded, because it now finally feels like we're done with tutorial. Like the past 2 years were a little bit rough, you know? It wasn't the most engaging gameplay, it wasn't the most engaging story. It was kind of just like, okay, yeah, this is a traditional MMO. However, I think we're finally coming back to our roots of PSO2, and on top of that, it actually confirms that NGS is a continuation of the base game, which is really nice to see. So now we sort of understand why they didn't just say, oh, scrap this, we're just going to start PSO3, because NGS is a continuation of the base PSO2 story. It's 1,000 years later, well, maybe a little bit more than 1,000 years later, and we now have to fight another big bad evil. So it's really cool that we got to see that. But there's one more thing I want to talk about, and that is the generation thing. because when we fought Zevetto, or before we fought him, he said that Planet Alpha was a testing ground where there were 3 generations of Arks. The first generation was absolutely obliterated when they introduced Dark Falls in. The second generation was a little bit more favorable, some survived and they managed to repel Dark Falls, and the third generation is us. We are the third generation. What I want to bring to everyone's attention is he specifically said that we are 909. And this is like a specific serial number or like a strain of DNA or something that created us. And on top of that, he also points out that Aina is the second generation of 909. And after we defeat Zevetto, he's like, oh, photon sensitivity, and the AI is like 100%. And he's like, okay, take that data and pass it on to the 4th generation. So are we clones of the original Guardian? So basically, are we clones of our base PSO2 characters? Or are we just like an offspring? Are they just like splicing DNA and creating 2nd generation, 3rd generation, 4th generation? That has got me very, very curious on what on earth are we? Are we actually created in a lab through cloning or through splicing of DNA? Or do we have parents? Because the thing is, Aina has a father. We saw Gaora. And so is Gaora the original 909? But he couldn't have been 1st generation because Zevetto said 1st generation was totally annihilated. So is he 2nd generation? But if he was 2nd generation, that means Aina would be 3rd generation technically, right? So I don't really know what's going on here, but it definitely seems like 909 or whatever this number is very, very special because Gaora was very strong, we're very strong. So it clearly means that, you know, we've got some sort of gene or some sort of trait that is making us this powerful or allowing us to get this powerful. Something that you're going to hear in tomorrow's podcast, actually, because it's with Elena, by the way, is we actually talk about emotion. I think the power of the Arks operatives actually are tied in with emotion because of Manon. Manon was very, very emotionless at the very beginning, and she was kind of like, okay, you know, she wasn't like OP or anything. However, when you go up to La Ciel, she gets really, really angry. And because she's really angry, she suddenly starts one-shotting these dolls. You're just like, what on earth is going on? How is she so strong? And then you meet all of the other clones or all the other quote-unquote Arks operatives up in La Ciel that have no emotion, and they look really, really weak. So now I'm just kind of curious, is it tied with emotion? Is it tied with trauma or tied with, what is it that gives the Arks operatives so much power and make us quote unquote the Guardian? So I can't wait to see where episode 2 leads us. But let me know in the comment section below, what do you guys think of chapter 5, as well as your theories of what episode 2 is going to entail.
Special thanks to all the members for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me. Thank you again.
But yeah, that's all I wanted to cover in today's video. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. If you did, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye!